So I just want to introduce Jim and Denise McDonald, who are joining me this afternoon. And Jim lives with Parkinson's, and Denise is his wife, and I had the distinct pleasure of working with Denise in hospice care for a long, long time ago at Kaiser. And we were on the same hospice team, and that's how I know Denise and have come to know Jim. So the first thing I want to say this afternoon is thank you for letting me be here with you, and thank you for coming together in community, because it makes a difference. Taking time to come into rooms like this, I know, takes a fair amount of courage, because my sense of life is that we can use anything, absolutely anything, to help ourselves soften and become tender. And in 25 years of working in end-of-life care and with people who have life-altering illness, I have come to understand and experience and believe that illness in particular has an amazing capacity for us to see ourselves. It has an amazing capacity to push us up against what we believe are our limits, only to find out that I have bigger limits. And the reason that I'm so grateful to be here this afternoon is because you are the people that are living this on a daily basis. And I want you to know that I know that matters. That matters more than anything. That you are the people that are actually walking the path today. And that's why it gives me goosebumps to stand in a room with so many of you this afternoon, so thank you. So I want to talk about, I actually heard the term today, care partner. I don't know about you all, but sometimes I'm getting kind of tired of the word caregiver. Any of you in the room that have been identified as caregiver and you're getting kind of tired of hearing that piece, right? Kind of like you're the sidekick. Right? Well, I think care partner, I think life partner, I think there's a whole bunch of ways to talk about this. But one of the reasons that I am so grateful that I heard care partner today is because the truth is, we are all, each one of us, walking our lives the best we can under circumstances that are difficult. And that no matter who I am, no matter what my role is in my relationship with others, each of us has the opportunity to be tended to and to be cared for. No matter what. So that if you are the one that's living with Parkinson's, I want to say there's so much that you have to offer back. And if you're living as a care partner, there's so much to receive as well as to give. See, we live in a culture, I believe, that teaches us that there's one person who gives and there's one person who receives. And that's not true. It's all going on all at the same time. It is really important for me to remember that if I am someone who is providing care, that there is also care coming back at me. That there's a reciprocal nature in the universe, that anytime I'm giving, I'm also standing in the opportunity to receive. And the reason I think it's important to talk about that today is because of what came up just before they finished the panel, and that is relationship. How do we navigate living with life-altering illness when we are in relationship? Because everything changes all the time. And there are things that come up that we get impatient with, that we feel embarrassed about, that we'd rather run away from than face. And yet I believe that living with life-altering illness is an incredible opportunity for deeper intimacy and connection. Because living with life-altering illness is that thing that will break us open. It's really our vulnerability that connects us. It's those places where we're frightened. It's those places where we're embarrassed. It's the places where I'm impatient. How many of you get impatient? Please don't let me be the only one in the room. Put them all up really high. Yeah. Look around. I want everybody to look around. Can you look around? See how many of us get impatient? And then I want to know how many of you feel bad when you get impatient. Yeah. And how many of you say mean things to yourselves when you get impatient? Right. We're so quick to self-criticism. We're so quick to say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And yet the truth is, it's happening to all of us. And those are the spots. Those are the places that are so filled with an opportunity for deepened intimacy and connection. It's that place where I have the opportunity to turn and tell the truth about how I'm feeling rather than stepping back. Rather than trying to say, oh, I'm bad, I should just get on with it, just push past this, and it's not serving us. Because it creates defense and barrier between me and my loved one when I do that. But when I turn toward my loved one and say what I'm feeling and what's true for me in that moment, now I have the opportunity to connect. It's so easy to allow life-altering illness to create space between us when really what it's designed for is for bringing us together in deepened intimacy, in deeper connection. It may not mean, for lots of us, it may not be that there's going to be physical intimacy in the same way as we've known it. For some of us, it will be. But what I know for absolute certain, that deep, intimate connection is so much less about physical intimacy than it is about heart and soul intimacy, even for those of us who are struggling with the dementia part of this disease. What I want to say is, if you love someone who is struggling with the dementia side of this disease, to remember that all that really is asking us, it's calling us to be intimate and connected from a different place than through the mind. Our hearts and souls are so powerful and so deep that we can connect and know deep intimacy without ever saying a word, without ever cognitively making it make sense. I recently had an experience of this with my mother, who just 8 weeks ago died from dementia. And I can tell you, in the last 2 weeks of her life, she could no longer speak. But I got more straight I love you from that woman in her last 2 weeks of life than I ever have in the other 89 years she was on the planet. She didn't speak, but she leaned into me. She put her arm around me. She petted my hair. She would make sounds. And what I saw in her was her calling me. She was asking me to come into her space and experience love from a place other than through my own mind. And we all have that opportunity every single day. Life-altering illness is difficult, there's no question about it. It breaks our hearts open. And so does much of other life. It's not about how am I going to beef myself up to get through this. It's actually, the question is, how am I going to soften? How am I going to allow my own vulnerability to be present here and to be changed as a result of this life-altering illness? So I asked Jim and Denise to join me this afternoon, because I think in some ways those who are living with Parkinson's and their partners can speak much more directly to this than I can. I've worked with Jim and Denise in some individual sessions, both with them together and as individuals. And it's absolutely, I can tell you, it's been stunning to me to see what they have navigated and what they have walked through and the level of honesty that they have found in themselves that they've been able to share with one another. And so I asked them to join me this afternoon so that they could tell you a bit about what they're doing in their relationship around maintaining connection and intimacy. So is it best if I ask you a question, or do you just have something you want to share? No. Okay. So I first want to say to Denise, what's been the most challenging part of being honest with Jim about where you are, your experience of him and his changes, and the changes that you have that you've experienced yourself as a result of living with Parkinson's?
I think the hardest part. At first, it was the denial on all levels, just complete denial that he was changing, that we were facing this, because we had all these life plans, and this was interfering, So I think, and I've been a hospice nurse for 25 years and did a lot of teaching, and let me tell you, when it's you, doesn't help. It's a completely different thing when it's you going through it. And I was so worried about hurting Jim's feelings and bringing up the changes that I saw. He was in denial. So we and then what that does is just makes you not speak at all. And we used to share everything, and so we just kind of started getting farther and farther apart. And so is that the answer?
So what did you do in terms of, I just remember conversations that we had of wanting to be really honest and straightforward and tender with yourself as well as with Jim. I mean, one of the things that's always been really striking to me about the two of you is how loving you have been about the other. Do you know what I mean? Everything is so motivated out of, I don't want to hurt anyone, and yet I'm hurting. I can't, if I'm always putting not hurting someone else ahead of me, and I'm hurting, eventually what happens is I get filled with resentment. And that resentment starts getting acted out in relationship. And so, what was one of the conversations that you guys had to have that was scary to you?
I think probably the first one was acknowledging the fact that he was having changes going on. And he started out more with the cognitive difficulties, executive dysfunction that he did with the tremors or anything. Mm-hmm. So that was the hardest thing to say, you need to be more safe at times. And so because I was storing everything up and not saying anything, then all of a sudden I just kind of have a meltdown, and he's looking at me like, well, where did that come from? Because I was just kind of keeping it to myself and not saying anything. So when it got to be a danger driving the car and things, that's when I've gone to Julie for counseling off and on for years. She's fabulous, by the way. And I just needed some help. I didn't know really where to start. I knew we had to be honest, and I also know that it's very healthy at times to respect other people's denials. So I didn't know for myself where to go.
Are there other people in the room that actually relate to this idea of I don't know where the line is? What do I share and what don't I? And how do I do it in a caring way? And one of the things that I think is really important to remember is I cannot go wrong with the truth. I can't go, now I have to pay attention to my delivery. I do have to pay attention to that. And how I do that is by paying attention to what's going on in me first. If I'm angry or I'm feeling resentful, it's really important for me to take time, make some time for myself to actually feel my own feelings so that I don't take and blow them at my partner. How many of you have done that? I've done that a whole bunch of times with my partner. And neither one of us has a life-altering illness at the moment. and I've done plenty of that, right? My husband is 17 years older than I am, and he has a difficult time hearing, and just his inability to hear me sometimes has set me off, right? And so these conversations are really important. How do I sit down and say, it's driving me crazy. This is really hard for me, or I'm really scared about this. See, and I think fear is something that's so important for us to look at. So often when we snap at someone or we get impatient with someone, what's laying underneath there is fear. I've gotten frightened about something. I'm not going to get what I need. I'm going to have to give more than I can. I'm trying to get out the door and get to work on time, and this just happened and I can't get there on time. All of the things that start happening are often based in fear, okay? I get afraid. So if I'm frightened about being honest about how I'm feeling about someone else's disease, I'm going to tend, if I'm not paying attention to myself, I am going to tend to deny that it's going on, or trying to convince the other person it's not as bad as it looks. Because it's frightening to sit down and say, I see this change happening and we need to have a conversation about it. And yet that's the very thing that we need to do. And it starts with being tender with myself first. That I have to be able to turn to myself and say, oh my gosh, I'm hurting from this disease too. When we live with life-altering illness, it's not a one-person thing. This disease affects everyone and everything. And each of us gets frightened. There's a lot that comes along with life-altering illness. Lifestyle changes, feeling lonely and abandoned, feeling separate, wondering what the future is going to look like. Oh my gosh, what happens when my loved one dies? All those things all the words that most of us don't want to say. We live in a culture that says don't say those words. Don't say the word die. Don't say the word sick. Don't get angry. And then we're all running around trying to be perfect little beings, and what happens is we create all kinds of space between ourselves and those that we love. So I have to start with taking care of me. In your packet, you're going to see there's a list. There's a little handout that I've put in there. And at the top it says embodiment of psycho-spiritual principles, and really all it is it's a list of ways to stay present in one's own heart and soul. And a lot of it is about taking time and breathing and slowing down. Not letting my reactivity get going quite as fast as I might feel like it's going. They're all ways to help me slow down and stay present and stay in here. Know what's going on in me. And then I can come to you and tell you what's happening, what I'm experiencing, and having the conversation that I need to have. So, Jim, can you speak a little bit to what it's been like to have Denise come to you and say, I see things changing? Are you able to speak to what your experience has been as a couple as your disease has progressed? Are you able to share some of that? Huh?
Hi, I'm Jim. My wife and I have had a wonderful marriage for many years, 30 plus. And when I got clobbered by this disease, as so many of you guys out there, a myriad of changes happened in my body and in my mind little bits of anger started coming forward. Unfortunately, I took a lot of my anger out on my caregiver, Denise. And I didn't really understand what was going on, except I knew it was something that I knew it wasn't life-threatening, but I knew it was something that was going to be almost impossible to deal with. When I saw people that suffered with this Parkinson's, I got very fearful. And the fear came out in my marriage, came out in the way I treated my wife. And it was very difficult. But the thing that we learned from Julie was telling the truth is the best way to go. It's amazing how you can feel so much better if you just tell the truth.
And so, can either of you speak to what some of those truths were that you had to tell each other? Are you willing to share some of that piece of it?
Just every aspect of our relationship changed. The things that we used to enjoy doing together, we lost a lot of that. Sexually, that changed, and that was very difficult. Jim had an incredible sense of humor, one-liners, just like, and I miss that. I miss the laughter. I mean, he made me laugh every day, and now he has difficulty word finding and things like that, so it's not as easy for him. He's lost the ability to drive the car, all those kind of things. So with the help of Julie, what we've been doing is focusing on what we can do now instead of what we can't do. But the loss is just progressive. It starts not so bad, and then it just kind of continues to add more things and more things. And as a caregiver, it was very difficult for me to tell him, I'm just feeling so irritated, so I would hold it back, but I think you can tell. I mean, when someone's irritated at you, whether they're nagging you or not, which I am very good at, they know. So once I started saying, I am not upset with you for doing, one of the things is every time you put something away, it's in a different place. So if I want soup, I have to look here, there, and everywhere. And I said, I'm not mad at you, but the outcome's the same. I'm still frustrated because I have to look everywhere for soup. So I'm not mad at you, I'm just frustrated. And it's very difficult for him, being the cause of the things in different places, to not feel responsible or not. And it took me a while to learn how to say it so that he knew it wasn't about him, it was more about me and my frustration.
So, Jim, can you speak a little bit to what it feels like to know that, what I'm doing sometimes makes it more difficult for Denise? The things that just kind of they're just things that you don't think about anymore. When you hear her say the soup is in a different place every time, what comes up in you?
Well, when we were raising the kids, it was never an issue because we were both too busy to worry about where we're going to find the soup bowl and all that. It's like, you get to know where things are in your house, and it's like she would come at me with an accusation, and I'd turn around and think to myself, what's the big deal? We'll find it. It's right around here somewhere. So then I'd go hunt it down, bring it to her, and all was good again.
I love that. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. To me, it's like, this is where we get to experience the softened heart. We're so busy trying to make life be how we think it should be. And yet when I hear you say, well, what's the big deal? It's like, oh, yeah, right. What's the big deal? We're going to find it. We are going to find it. One of the other things that I remember kind of distinctively in conversations with Jim and Denise was the grief that was coming up. The deep grief and sadness about what was going on and how each of them was losing pieces of the other or losing ways that they were in relationship before, and that this grief was something that really needed to be spoken about. And I know that they actually did take time, and I know that Denise went and took time for herself to feel what it felt like to have Jim living with this disease, and that the ultimate outcome of this meant that in all likelihood there will come a day when she lives without him. And I know that Jim has talked a lot about how he is the one who's living with Parkinson's, and that the day will probably come when he will leave the planet before Denise does. Now, granted, none of us has any for sures about any of this, right? I mean, none of us knows that for certain. But the truth is, when we're living with life-altering illness, that stuff is in the room. That stuff is going on in the relationship, in between the people and all over, in the whole family. The whole family is being affected by this. And these thoughts are running through everybody's head. The feelings are running through everybody's hearts and souls. And it's really important that we're able to go to each other and say, I'm so sad. Can you speak a bit to that?
There's been a ton of grief, and as you all know, there's stages. It's like things go along for a while, and then there's a change, and we're trying very hard to talk about each change, what that means for us, and what we aren't able to do now. But okay, we kind of have our little pity party, and we only allow that to last for several hours, and then we think about what we can do now. What is left that we can do, because there's still so much left. But when you only look at, for me being a hospice nurse, it was like everybody else had such a worse thing going on, so how could I possibly ever complain? For the first couple of years that Jim was ill, it's like I would never even allow myself to grieve, because, oh my gosh, I've had all these worse stories. So like Julie said, it started coming out in other ways, with being tired and being exhausted and getting depressed and that kind of thing. So now we just talk about almost everything. I mean, I think we talk about everything. But we cry a lot. I mean, we do cry. We talk about it, how much we'll miss each other and how much we miss what we had. And then how are we going to do what we have left?
Mm-hmm. Jim, you want to say anything about that? Anything about sadness or grief?
Yeah, I think my grieving started with the first time I saw my hand tremor. It was like I saw that and I thought, oh boy, this is not good. And I decided to ignore it for a long time. But the fear welled up inside me, and I felt that something was on the horizon that was not going to be good. In fact, the fear I'm feeling right now, I apologize for the shaking, is It's actually fear and not Parkinson's.
Nervousness and not Parkinson's.
Yeah, nervousness and not Parkinson's. But the fear was the biggest deal for me for a long time until I started understanding the disease better. And but when it really started affecting our relationship, that made it 10 times harder for me. Because now Denise was looking at me in a whole different light. And at first I felt I was being pitied. I couldn't handle that. I'm sure a lot of you folks have felt that. But the key was going to be, and I wanted so much for Denise not to suffer with this crazy disease like I had been. And I felt horrified anyway that she had to deal with some of the things that she had to deal with. It was very hard, but she's the best caregiver in the world. I want to acknowledge that publicly.
Yeah. Denise is the best caregiver in the world. Yeah. Thank you. So if you are here with someone you love, I'm just going to ask you to take a minute to just take a deep breath together. And I want you to lean toward that person just a little bit. Just lean in. There you go. If you want to close your eyes and do that, whatever, or take somebody's hand and just acknowledge that we're human beings. That each of us, all of us, are doing the very best we can. And I don't know about you, but sometimes my very best isn't very graceful. But it doesn't matter. Each of us is doing the very best we can. And in just leaning into that person that you love, just going into your heart, just breathing into your own heart and soul and chest. It's like, here I am. I am here for myself, and I am here for you. That alone is an experience of connection and intimacy. All of us are longing to be known and to be seen. And there's nothing about life-altering illness that says that cannot continue. We actually have a right to live in our own hearts and souls. Can I ask where we are on time? I don't see a clock anywhere, and I don't want to go over. I have 5 minutes. Thank you very much. So in this last 5 minutes, what I would like to do is just offer an experience of just being connected to oneself. Is there any chance we can turn the lights down a little bit in here? If we can, great. If not, don't worry about it. But I'm going to ask you all, if you would, to just place your feet on the floor if you can, if you're comfortable doing that, staying connected to that person that you're with. Remembering, I forgive myself, I forgive you for all of our humanness. The truth is, we're just human beings doing the best we can, putting one foot in front of the other. And so taking a moment to just breathe. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, feel free to do that. And just notice the rise and fall of your own chest as you breathe in and breathe out. Allowing the breath to quiet the mind and soften the heart. Breathing in and breathing out. And taking a moment to notice the soles of your feet. And consciously breathing in through the soles of the feet, breathing in all of the nurturing, solid, grounded energy of Mother Earth. Recognizing how deeply we are connected to her. Breathing the amazing energy of nature and Mother Earth up through the soles of the feet and up through the legs and the pelvis and right into your own heart space. Giving thanks for the little bit of moisture in the air today. Giving thanks for the hope of rain. Giving thanks for being in this place of autumn, the place of transition, right along with Mother Earth, as she allows herself to fall fallow, to be quiet, to go into the quiet, dark season, the place of nurturing. And then taking a moment, if you would, putting your attention at the top of your head and breathing in through the top of the head all of the energy of Father Sky and the great star nation, all of the energy of the great Creator, just breathing that inspirational, life-giving energy down in through the head, across the scalp, down across the ears and the jaw, into the neck, allowing that life-giving energy to flow across the shoulders and into the arms and hands and fingers. And breathing that life-giving energy down through the neck and into the chest and right into your heart space. And now I invite you to just place your hand on your own heart for just a moment. In the acknowledgement that it is right here in the human heart that Mother Earth and Father Sky meet. Right here in our human hearts is the perfect balance of heaven and earth, of dark and light, of life and death. Right here in the human heart is all of life. And just breathing. And so giving thanks for this day, giving thanks for the sun rising, for the moon that will show herself this evening, and for everything that happens in between and beyond, knowing that today is a good day. Aho. So when you're ready, I just invite you to open your eyes and take a deep breath. And I want to thank Jim and Denise for joining me this afternoon and for being here. Again, I want to say thank you for letting me be here. I just want to let you know that at the pink table, if you want to know more about what I'm doing or support groups that I'm doing or anything like that, you can put your email address on the sign-up sheet. It's got a little heart at the top of it. And I will put you into my database and you'll get a newsletter from me just once a month. So if you're interested, you can do that. And again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for walking the path that you walk and for being here this afternoon. Thank you.